You know, it wasn't quite the first. On the second album we did, which was called A Quick One, there was a track called A Quick One While He's Away, which was a mini opera.
Oh,
It was
yes.
six short songs linked together. After that album came out, I met Paul McCartney in a nightclub, and he took me aside and he said, "Pete, that mini opera thing is so cool." He didn't actually say, "Would you mind if we did something like it?" But the inference was that they were already considering doing something long form. And very, very soon after, early in, I think it was in May of '67, we were on the road, Sergeant Pepper came out. Before that, at the end of '66, in America, Pet Sounds came out by the Beach Boys. And although neither of them were narrative concepts, they were definitely poetic stories. They were gatherings of images and ideas that added up to a new way of putting songs together.
I had the intelligence, certainly, to recognise that within the abilities of Pete Townsend, we had someone really unique in his songwriting ability. He had the ability to voice that inner voice that we all have into music in a way that it struck a chord which in itself is timeless. That's what's so amazing when I listen back to these records. I am constantly amazed that it doesn't age. I think that's to do with the fact that it's coming from a centre which is deep within us all, which is our truth. Any moment it will be part of our truth somewhere in our life, and it will resonate, and that resonance will carry it forward. It astonishes me how modern most Who music sounds today, because all we had was a completely mishmash of a mixture of songs that didn't really make an album. 100%. We were always, I was always in particular 100% behind whatever people were trying to do. Didn't always understand it, but always 100% behind the concept. This was not a concept album at the time we made it. It was a lot of bits of songs that Pete had, ideas, like Rael, for instance, which is, it's a precursor to Tommy in a lot of ways. You're going to get a lot of the bits from Amazing Journey in Rael. That was being pieced together in the studio as, just scraps of paper that he had written down with this kind of synopsis of a story. And we were in the harmonies up as we went along. And I can't remember where it was done, but it was a tiny, tiny little studio, not much bigger than my office here,
You know, when if we go back to the Who Sell Out, there's a lot of stuff on that album, and the whole story of the album is very different than the way it used to be. And I think I may have been the first not to know about that. I think everybody that made music in rock and pop knew that, but I was the first to articulate it and try to explain it. And I think I still feel that really, really strongly. I won't sit down and just write a song. Well, I will just sit down and write a song for fun, but you'll probably never hear it.
Through your own work, which is not something you often do.
I do it quite a lot. I've got demos of everything Who have ever done since the very first recordings. And for this, I did the work on the demos for this back in 2017. So I finished in April because that was the 50th anniversary year, and I thought it was going to be an anniversary package. I love it. I love it today because I was working on old tape machines back then. The tapes have lasted pretty well, but some of them are stretched. Some of them, were recorded very cheaply. And with modern computers, I can fix a lot of the problems.
But it's also a lot of those problems are what's so awesome about them. And I think if you're an audiophile, if you love sound, beyond just melody and music and racket and rock and all the things that come from being a musician, if you love diving into the sound of things, there's something so magic about the fact that age actually plays a part in the way things end up back then. Now, age is not going to make any difference. Those digital files will remain the same. But you go back to those tapes and you haven't touched them and things have changed, right?
That's exactly right, Zane. I think music has changed a lot even since the birth of digital sound.
So in a weird way, I'm sure people like me assume that you are in love with these old demos and the way they sound, but you do love the way technology pushes things forward, don't you? You always were pushing things forward.
Yeah, I do. I really love it. I'm lucky because I can use both. I still have all that old stuff So I can mix and match. And I do really like soft synths. I do, because I think one of the things about them is that you can open a laptop, play something with a little mini keyboard and be inspired. And I think when I go back to the old analog synths, what I'm looking for is not a particular sound or a particular grunge or anything. I'm looking always for inspiration. I'm always looking for a song. You know, I feel if I went out tomorrow and bought a soft synth that cost, you know, $100, it would be $100 well spent if I got a song out of it. Equally, if I went out and bought, you know, spent $100,000 on an old Moog and I got a song out of it, it will be worth it. That's all I care about.
Do you ever become a fan in order to be inspired? Rather than just go to the instrument and go to the source, do you ever go to the records that inspired you as a kid or things that you love in the hope that it's going to spark? Or is that kind of almost sacrilegious? Does it feel almost plagiaristic?
No, I do it, and I've done it a lot recently because I set this room up as a listening room. I used to have a cinema. But in the 70s that I started to feel really honestly that rock music, the function of rock music and of pop music too, but I think it was busy and I was writing all the time. And when we came to consider putting an album out around Christmas 67, it was a real ragbag of stuff, but quite a few of the songs were my first attempts to deal with the metaphysics, to deal with the abstract nature of music, to deal with manic depression. You know, the song Melancholia the working title was originally The Virus. You know, it was about mental illness as a virus. Now we have a virus which is leading to mental illness. You know, it's the other way around. So some of the songs were very serious, but most of them were really flippant, you know, light-hearted. Some of them were funny. Some of them were meant to be amusing, meant to be distracting, meant to be, you know, about advertising and about the commercial world of advertising.
Like, I'm not going to be the masculine you think I need to be. That's a serious concept at that time.
I think that's right. I think the song was meant to challenge that. It wasn't meant to make, because now we have tattoos and men that wear tattoos are actually using tattoos to defy masculine stereotypes.
I got to get into what weaves through The Who Sell Out, the idea of radio, the idea of jingles, the concept, again, very well traveled now. So many people have used radio to weave through their music. Dr. Dre, you know, incredible artists have chosen that idea of radio being the voice behind the voice. When you were doing it, you really came from that place of pirate radio. Why? What was it about that particular aesthetic that you really wanted to lean into to help tell the story of The Who Sell Out?
I think it was a celebration. 1967 was when pirate radio was banned in the UK by the government. They were always annoyed by it because the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, was deepened its grip on broadcasting in the UK during the war. It became the voice of the nation. There's a thing called the BBC World Service, which is listened to all around the world in I think it's 50 different languages. So the idea that these guys could go out on a ship in the North Sea or off the coast of Ireland and broadcast to teenagers in the UK unlicensed was an anathema to the government at the time. Whether it was a left-wing or a right-wing government, I can't remember. But I do remember that without them, I feel that without them, you wouldn't have had the Stones, you wouldn't have had the Beatles, you wouldn't have had the Kinks. When we gathered all this stuff together, I said to our managers and our record producer, I said, let's sell commercials between the tracks. Let's make commercial songs. Let's make songs about products. I'd done two songs for the American Cancer Society to discourage people from smoking, which was a bit hypocritical because I smoked. But they were good songs.
Hang on, hold that thought. How does that work? Listen.
I didn't get paid for it, so I knew the level of hypocrisy I was working in. The weird thing about the song Little Billy is that I made an even bigger gaffe when seen from, 2021, which was that the song is about this kid called Little Billy, and the reason that he lives longer than all of the kids who smoke is, hey, he's fat. But he doesn't smoke. So although he's fat, he lives longer than all of the kids who are not fat because he doesn't smoke, folks.
One of the most important things about this album isn't just the quality of songwriting, and we're on a fast track to talk about that. It's for being judged for that term selling out, which you coined.
art college and studied graphic design and advertising. So it was in my head quite seriously that we would make quite a lot of money. So I got Chris Stamp, our manager, to call up Coca-Cola. I thought, they'll buy time. So I was trying to sell, the gaps in between the vinyl. Anyway, I said to Chris, so what happened when you spoke to the guys at Coke? He asked me how many albums we're likely to sell. So I exaggerated and I said, well, maybe 100,000. And he said, the guy put the phone down. The only company that responded even slightly positively was a company called Rotor Sound Strings, who gave John Entwistle free strings for the rest of his life. Oh, and Premier Drums were already giving Keith Moon free drums to smash up. Even, in my mid-70s, I'm still caught up in the ideas that I learned at art college. The people that taught me were the same people that taught Brian Eno. We have this similar approach to music as art, as ambience, as a part of a social debate, all of these things. So it's more than pop music, and it's more than performing. It's an artistic act in the sense that it's an installation act.